Welcome to Season 3 of the Giant series on It's a Mimic. We're back with more Giants in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but in this season, we're digging into all the information that we could find in the Bigby Presents Glory of Giants. I'm Megan, and joining me, of course, for this series is Casey.
This episode is going to focus on the lore and overall updates from Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants.
Before we get started, though, of course, we're going to crack a bottle. So, Casey, what are we drinking today? I like that we called it a bottle. It is not a bottle, but I'll let you describe what we're drinking today.
This is foreshadowing for a later topic in this episode. We are drinking a rosé from a bag, also known as cardboardo.
Yeah, we call it cardboardo. It is box wine, but it does come in a bag.
It is in a bag in the box.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it there because it's just a delightful, it was a nice image on the box, and so we're going with, we needed a wine from a bag today to stay on theme.
Wine in the bag.
And
All
here
right.
we are.
All right. This is a very different pour sound, I promise.
Very different pour sound. It is not what it sounds like. It truly is wine from a bag.
It's a good way to start.
Yeah, we're starting off hot.
All right, I will put this over here, and then... All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, yeah, that tastes like $25.
Yes, there is only upwards from here in this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a solid start, but here we go. It basically tastes like water, but I don't know if that's a me problem. That might be a me problem.
It is definitely a dry rosé.
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, wine from the bag. We're going to do fine. It's going to be fine.
Gonna be great.
Let's dig right into it then.
All right. So we covered a bit around the Ordning at the early days of this Giant series to begin with. Mm-hmm. But this new book outlines a little bit more context and a little bit more stories. So that's what I'm going to get into to kick this season off. First, I'm going to introduce Diancastra for listeners. Diancastra's Saga is a story told across the realms in many iterations, and it is written as page 1 in this book as a poem.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. She is the storm giant daughter of the all-father god Anam. She's a demigod that had a mortal mother. Her siblings are 6 goddess-born sons who epically have disappointed Anam in their task to be rulers in the mortal realm. And she has a half-sister, Hiatia, who defeated a multi-headed monster. I feel like Diancastra can respect that, opposed to what the sons have achieved. And there is also a third sister, Iolanis, but she is not mentioned in the poem, but is mentioned later. So in the poem, Diancastra is seeking to claim her own divine inheritance as a demigod. She used her wit over heroism. She disguised herself to steal heavily guarded items, solved sphinx riddles, mazes, and even won a drinking contest with another god if you look into lore outside of this book.
Nice.
So she's pretty badass.
Yeah.
She even finds her own father's secret sanctum to confront him about this. But he is still not convinced, calling her successes pranks and rebellion, and gives her another quest to bring me pure perfection, something my craft cannot better. And so she leaves for the Forgotten Seas into the storms of chaos and returned with a mote of matter that is shapeless, unformed, and ever-changing. This bests the Allfather, as he realized he cannot be satisfied by any form he shapes it into. He admits defeat and gives Diancastra her god spark and respects her clever and wit.
Nice.
He shapes the matter into a crown for her and has renewed faith in all of his children and their descendants, thanks to Diancastra.
Well done.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome, bitches.
So this hope is felt in all giants to keep faith that they can reclaim their people's ancient glory. Now, let's get into the Ordning. This is big. This is the thing about giants. It was created directly from the birth order of Anam's sons. So we have 6 main families of giants. First is Storm, who is the son Strongmouse. Far above everyone else and have no interest in ranking themselves is storm giants. Cloud is next, and this is from son Memnor, and this focuses on wealth. Next is fire with son Surtur, and this is around developing and refining your craft.
Yeah.
Frost is next with Thrym, and they focus on strength. Stone is Scorius, and this is artistry and rock throwing. It specifically lists rock throwing as well as artistry.
I think that's hilarious, because we all know that all giants throw rocks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But to define the stone.
They throw them the best. Yeah.
And finally, in 6th level, we have hill giants, where we have son Gurlantor, which is basically their focus is the larger and stronger you are, the better you are, and it's just basic level. Like, there's nothing else going on for them.
Yeah, brain real smooth.
And no matter what any giant does, they or their giant family can never level up in the Ordning, but it doesn't stop some of them from trying. There are other origin stories of the Ordning in this book. One I liked is that the family order aligns with the structure of a mountain. So the foothills at the bottom are for hill giants. Then you're climbing stone giants. Then you meet the snow peaks, which is the frost, and the lava flows from the mountain volcano, fire. And then you reach up into the clouds for cloud giants, and then the storms. So I kind of like that analogy. The visual of that is quite pleasant.
Yeah, because it never really gave you that. It was almost like it was intended based on where they are in the Ordning, but that's not how it's described. Right?
No, it's just about, like, generations and, like, descendants.
Yeah, and then
just
that your job in the Ordning is what gave you your position in the ordering. So, like, it was like the Ordning was based on making weapons is very important, which put fire giants up high.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
And, like, so if that was how it was previously described, so I like this better. There's just a visual of what that means, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So note how Anam's 3 daughters have no part of the Ordning, and they continue to push against it because of that. Anam really doesn't have an excuse for this one, so we're just gonna say, like, fuck the patriarchy.
Yeah. Fuck you, Anam.
In fairness, it also doesn't include Fomorians, who were born from Gurlantor's twin, Corantor.
Yeah.
Because, and the story is, Anam didn't like that the Fomorians assaulted the Feywild, so excluded them.
Yeah.
Petty, but sure.
Petty as fuck, yeah.
It also doesn't include death giants, who were once cloud giants, because they served the Raven Queen in death and essentially turned away from their ancestors and place in the Ordning.
That kind of makes sense. It's just like you no longer follow Anam, the Allfather. Why would you have a place in his Ordning?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that checks out.
Yeah. So really, it's just the 3-daughter thing that will kind of burn.
Yeah.
As you know from the other giant seasons, there are plenty of other giant types. These, as well as Fomorians, are considered to be below hill giants in the Ordning. So we're talking trolls, ogres, cyclops, ettins, and the humanoid furbolgs and Goliaths. Yeah. They're like the lowest of the low. I don't even think Anam would even, like, acknowledge their existence. It's just, he's a bit pretentious.
Yeah, full of himself, shall we say.
And giants can also reject the Ordning, and this is usually in 3 ways. Giants who hold themselves to a different standard. This is more commonly in the lower giant families. As well, followers of the 3 daughters of Anam push against the Ordning. So it's kind of, that, like, sticking it to the man type thing.
Suck it.
Second is revolutionary giants, who might want to rule giants from other families above their level or question the levels and what defines them. As an example, a highly skilled fire giant may question why they have to be below a cloud giant that has no skills in that area, and claim to basically operate at cloud giant level. Yeah. It's like, they're there, sure. But in the grand scheme, you're never going to be a cloud giant level, but you can argue that and reject the Ordning.
All I can see is that, like, Thor conversation where it's just like, we all know who's in charge.
Yes.
It's me, right? I'm in charge? Yes, of course. That
is exactly it. Yeah. It's like, sure.
Sure, you're in charge.
giants who decide to follow a different religion where they are held in a higher position, and basically feel seen, also have more power in those positions, can reject the Ordning. So basically, it's in the lower levels where, say, I just think of like the Goblin King in Lord of the Rings for this one too, where it's like a hill giant suddenly becomes like a leader of some very insignificant thing. And so then they're like, ha, look, I have power. I am above my level in the Ordning.
Look what I have created.
Yeah.
Look at my macaroni sculpture.
Yes.
Put it on the fridge.
So rejecting the Ordning is out there. There's a few iterations of that if you want to play around with it.
Yeah.
Giants are found throughout the material plane, and according to Diancastra Saga, were meant to rule and did for a time in some historical records, including in the Forgotten Realms where there is, I quote, the time of giants. Mm-hmm. Not surprisingly, for most giants, a pantheon of gods only includes Anam, his 7 sons, that includes the hill giant twin brother, and then his 3 daughters. So Diancastra is the only demigod, but because of what I just explained about the poem, and she did all the awesome things and proved it, she is like, has that divine level and status.
Yeah.
And all giants know that Anam is at the top, but also is always disappointed in his children and has no interest in the role giants play in the material plane. Like, he's basically just doesn't give a shit. And it's harsh. So depending on which child piques your interest, the book describes each of them in more detail and what would be expected by their devotees. So if you want to dive into those or other gods that giants and giantkin may worship, these are also described in the book, and it goes as far as listing like demon lords, such as Baphomet and Demogorgon, Yenogu. So you can look at the list of the 7, and if something piques your interest there, great. But if you want to just go adjacent to those other areas, those are also listed there too, which is helpful.
Yeah.
Details of the elemental evil, cults, and options for adventure hooks around Anam's children and what is called the interloper gods, as they're called, is also included in the book. So if you're really stuck on the inspiration from the descriptions, you get to roll for it. You can roll and it will decide.
I did find this book is filled with tables.
Yes.
Like, if you wanted to randomize things, you can randomize pretty much anything with this book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I find what is arguably the most interesting part of giant history is that one thing Anam did do is teach his children language and runes of power. This gets overlooked, I think, a lot in campaigns, but it's so much fun to get into. Runes were a sacred secret for the giants, though, and it only gained its written form through the introduction of Dwarvish script, which then could be used to transcribe the giant runes into actual symbols. Mm-hmm. The art and everything around describing the runes is really great as well. So, like we already talked about, the book includes adventure hook tables for each giant family, even for rejecting the Ordning, to help with inspiration in your own campaign. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for the back to basics, why do I want to put giants in my campaign, this book has it all.
Yeah, no, absolutely does. Yeah. All right. Do you remember if we rolled dice in this? I don't remember. Do we?
I feel like we did not.
I don't think we do.
I think we've forgone the rolling and we just talk.
Well, we are better than everybody else, so it does make sense.
We make our own rules sometimes.
It's been a long time since we've done a Giants episode.
I know.
All right, well, as a whole, Okay, Dan. Jeepers.
I know.
Sorry, I'm not supposed to reference
You're also not supposed to reference that.
So cut that out!
Did anyone else miss this as much as I did? For fuck's sakes.
Well, I mean, okay, so now we've kind of gone over a couple of the different gods, some of the things that you can follow. So what inspires you the most about the giant gods themselves? What would you say? I mean, their dad's a dick. I think that's the most inspiring thing right there, right?
Yeah. And to be honest, I wouldn't even focus on that as, like, there's so much more. It's like, yes, Dad, like, shunned all the kids because they disappointed him epically. Mostly it was the sons, because he's like, go and rule and be prosperous, and then they just shit.
They shit the bed. But that's what I was like, why? That's the thing about the daughters then. It's just like, I would want to focus the story in on the daughters because the sons are the focus of his disdain and like, you are a stain on this earth, but like, what did the daughters do? And I would almost want to be a worshiper of one of the daughters.
Yeah, me too. And so I think that's what is most inspiring. Like in Diancastra's Saga, the poem, it even refers to the sons' like actions as blunders. Like it's just, they epically just messed it all up.
Yeah. You suck.
Yeah. And then like it just touches on all of these amazing stories that Diancastra would have with like dealing with a sphinx and you know, stealing precious items from really difficult and protected areas. So that's where I think you could add in a lot of more interesting stuff. So
yeah, there's a lot of intrigue with her because like knowing all the things that she has done, it shows that she's wicked smart. She's very quick. She's very roguelike. Like she's a very well developed. If you just read the things that she has done, you can almost figure out what her stat block would be like.
Yeah,
right.
And she's definitely got some bardic inspiration in there.
Yeah, charming as fuck. Yeah, no, I think yeah. So I mean, that brings me to my next question: is like, who is your favorite giant god and why?
Well, as much as I love fire giants, so I'm always gonna be like, fire giants.
Yeah.
Honestly, Diancastra brings the most intrigue and interest, and so I'm gonna lean into my fuck the patriarchy feminist side and be like, my favorite giant in this season of the Giants and Wine is Diancastra.
Yeah, like fuck all the rest of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I stuck with the Frost Giants being my favorite, I would say like Thrym is the most well known in my brain. Not only because again, Frost Giants were my favorite when we were going through them in our last couple seasons, but also we're playing in a current campaign where Thrym was well present in not well present, but there was a god that a few folks in the campaign were following, right?
Yeah.
So that story was told and like redone and shifted and shaped to fit our world. But it was awesome for me because we just finished season 2 of the Giants series when we started playing in that campaign, and I'm like, I know everything about this man.
It's like, yay!
So, and I do like the Frost Giants as a whole in terms of like what they represent and the fact that they're kind of an isolated group of giants. They're not really necessarily a part of the Ordning in a way that they assist unless they are called upon. So I like that idea that you can kind of put a frost giant anywhere you want as long as they're within the mountains or something like that. And I think that like Thrym being something to worship if you're just someone who believes in personal strength and all those kinds of things, I just find that really interesting. So
yeah, and it aligns, I think, really close with like Goliath as player character, as a playable race.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, perfect.
And like, even if you just want to go with like Goliaths and then do barbarians, fit really well into like a frost giant background, right?
With the strength focus.
Yeah, and now that we have giant related backgrounds because of this book, it's a little bit easier to tie that in.
Yeah.
So I think that's fun.
I'm so happy that this book exists.
Came out at a good time.
Timing, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that being that, let's talk a little bit about role-playing as giants. So with this new book, we get a ton of new tables and thoughts around how to role-play your giants as a DM. I feel like a lot of these tips and tricks can also be used if you're wanting to play a character with a giant background. Just tapping into a couple of these little tips and tricks might kind of help you realize how to play them. Most of this can be found in Chapter 2, where it starts off by kind of reminding DMs and players that giants should essentially be treated like any other humanoid NPC. They have thoughts, they have feelings, they have emotions, they have tics, they have obsessions, and, just like anyone else would, right? So the chapter breaks down into some key things to remember about giants, such as, of course, their size, their age, volume, pride, and, of course, their naming conventions. So it breaks things down quite nicely for you. And again, as I said earlier in the episode, there's a ton of tables. So you can randomize your giant from like nose to toe. Like you don't have to put too much thought into it because the book kind of helps you do that.
You can literally roll for size of a lot of things.
Literally in this book, yes. Speaking of, so I'll break these down in a little bit. So for size, remember we're dealing with humanoids that are 16 to 26 feet tall, depending on which style you're going with. So a reminder that they would treat the average sized world a little bit differently than someone who is 5 to 7 feet tall. So there is actually a table that gives some good descriptors, such as like, I'm going to eat this watermelon that is the size of your head in one bite. Or like swatting away birds like they're gnats. Like, because they're, little tiny, like, annoying things to them, right? For age, it is a humble reminder that giants can live anywhere from 200 to 800 years, depending on their types. So I do believe we covered some of that in our previous episodes about giants and their ages and how they can span into ancient existing creatures. So the thing to remember is that sometimes it can be difficult for those that live long to find a purpose in your quest or your mortal lives, right? So this is something to make sure that you as a DM are putting some thought into. Why would a 700-year-old cloud giant give a shit about what your 25-year-old halfling is doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's that make it make sense. It's like you can always do whatever you want, but in this scenario, if you're going to make it they have to seek out a 700-year-old giant.
Yes.
Has to be a big reason.
Yeah, no, for sure. For volume, this is just representing, as it sounds, how loud they can be. So, but of course, when it comes to role-playing, you don't simply just yell at your players. Instead, you can use descriptions of their volume by saying things like, the giant's laugh leaves your ears ringing.
Yeah.
And, like, that kind of stuff, right? So just to give you, like, an idea of the fact that they are more loud, or you can hear them coming from miles away, or when they... or when they scoff at you, like, there's the ground rumbles, right? When they put their coffee mug down, the table shakes, right? Like, it's just... Those kinds of descriptors give you more of an impact of the size that they actually are.
Yeah. I like that they included that because, again, it's something that could be easily overlooked, but adds a lot of context and flavor to the situation. And if it gets as far as, like, it could be rolling a con save when they're laughing, like whoever's sitting next to them. Yeah. Because it's like, you go deaf for 30 seconds because it's so loud.
Yeah, roll a constitution save to not go deaf. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's hilarious. And, like, I remember, and we've talked about this before, but, like, those cute little myths about giants. And, like, I was always told when I was a kid that thunder was giants bowling in the sky.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, those small things like that. So I just, like, again, those descriptions can make them seem a little bit more lifelike than just, they're really tall.
Yeah.
For pride, this is a reminder to DMs that giants of all kinds are proud of who they are and what they are, no matter where they stand within the Ordning. But how do you kind of show this? Make it so your giant only speaks giant and turns its nose up at the common tongue that you're using, right? Or describe them using a condescending tone towards simpler creatures. So it is always stated a lot, even in the previous books and in this book, that their pride in who they are and believing they are one of the number one species out there is a big part of their why they stick together, why they have an ordning, why they stay, like, why they are the way that they are. So just keep that in mind. And then finally for names, there are some, again, lovely tables that help you find names for different types of giants available from hill giants all the way up to storm giants. So don't be scared to use these if you're having trouble with naming. But remember, they are proud creatures, so they will have pride in their name as well. So I have of course had experience at tables where people, like, will give funny names to their giants because they're just represented sometimes as, like, bumbling oafs, especially, like, your classic hill giant. But, like, they have a lot of pride in their name. So even if you give them a bumbling dumb name, they're going to be proud of it. Yeah. So just remember that.
Yeah, and that's where, like, too, it's that camaraderie in the sense of, in day-to-day, two hill giants may hate each other, but when they're going up against, like, say there's a scenario where there's stone giants or some other type of giants, those hill giants are going to band together and be like, hey, we're the hill giant, like, level, you know? It's like the camaraderie and depending on the circumstance. Yeah. So they're always going to come back to that ordning and, like, group with their own people.
Well, I mean, that being said, so at the end of the day, that's kind of some tips and tricks on how to roleplay them. But another key thing that this book provides in Chapter 3 is that it kind of helps you build what an encounter might look like with a giant. So a lot of good DM tips in there for you to be able to utilize.
Ooh, fun.
It lays out a few different tables to help kick off some hooks and ideas and how you'd like to interact with the giant. It does break it down by giant type, including death giants, which I think is cool, but also it also has your hill giants all the way up to your storm giants, so on and so forth. Casey, choose a giant type.
Okay, well, fire giant.
Should have seen that coming. All right, so, and then pick a number from 1 to 10.
8.
All right. So you can run into one fire giant smith working on a breastplate sized for a large creature. It's just random things that you can do.
All right.
Yeah. There's also ones like for instance, this one here, one Fomorian contemplating a gemstone it thinks is floating, but that is actually suspended inside a gelatinous cube.
That's an unfortunate realization.
The frost giant ones are really cool. So there's one here. It's like a one frost giant ice shaper is performing a sacrifice to Thrym.
Nice.
Yeah. Or a hill giant dejectedly trying to reassemble a small stone, building it accidentally demolished. So basically reassembling a small stone building it accidentally broke. It's like, oh no!
These could also serve as rapid fire random encounters.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like even if it doesn't end up being like something big and elaborate, it's okay, you're bringing your group into some kind of giant country.
Yeah.
You know? Or giant, like a realm where there's known to be many giants. You could just like quickly roll on this and see what they come across.
Yeah, like this one here is like a kind of a classic one that we've seen in some campaigns and in movies. 2 hill giants roasting a bear over a burning wagon and excessively seasoning it with spices plundered from the wagon. But it also does break down other things like dinosaur world encounters, elemental encounters, because when you have giants, you are going to have access to the elemental planes as well as the elements themselves. So obviously, you're going to have interactions with elementals floating around there, right?
I think that's going to be a common theme through this season.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But then it also goes into the kin, so the cyclopses of the world, again, furbolgs, other things like that. But then, from there, throughout this chapter, it also gives larger plot hooks for like your BBEG, like your big bad evil guy, or longer campaign ideas. Not only that, but also breaks down the different kinds of giants roles have in society and the hooks that might bring them into your campaigns. So, and they also have lists such as like the different giant patrons, so not even just the giants, classic gods that you would follow, but also the other patrons that they might follow. It also gives you breakdowns of like if you were a giant seer. So like, you know how storm giants tend to be the seers of XYZ, it'll give you a breakdown of why you might come across one. Right? So if you want to use a more specified type of giant, there's a couple tables in here that help you do that. So like, just to give an example of a giant realm hook, a fissure opens during an earthquake and ordinary means can't determine its depth. Adventurers are asked to explore it and determine the source of the light that is barely visible far below. So like fall into a giant realm. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And like, can you imagine having to seek out a seer and you know nothing about it? They're just called like the all-seer or something. Yeah. And so you're imagining probably like a either like a 1,000-year-old elf or a like 90-year-old human lady or something, or a creature that's blind, you know, like just the classic seer. And then you walk in and it is a like 27-foot giant in like a giant room and is like surrounded by all of these things that allows them to see anywhere in like the material plane or other. Yeah. Yeah, it would be a cool spin or like introduction of bringing a giant in if that's like the first time.
Yeah, exactly, right. And we talk a lot about like how to bring giants into your campaign if you're not playing in a giants campaign, but they just happen to be around because they are.
They are everywhere.
Yeah, but like in this book as well, they go into a bunch of giants myths in this chapter as well that kind of helps out if you want to have a giants specific focused campaign. So, like, for instance, one of these is called The Giants Hold Up the World. So it's 6 scions of giant gods literally hold the world together. Perhaps they're reasonable for holding the continents above the ocean surface or supporting the dome of the sky, or they might keep the world together through magical means. So you can dive into these myths as being historical things that you can use as plot hooks, right? So, anyways, that chapter is an awesome chapter for if you want any kind of inspiration on, again, how to role play your characters in chapter 2, and then mixed in with kind of like how to bring them into your campaigns, but with interesting plot hooks.
Cool.
Yeah. But out of those, what inspires you the most about role-playing tips?
What I am trying to build better as a DM is setting the stage a lot more and being as more descriptive for those players that really want to know what the scene looks like. It's not the players that just want to, who is in here that we can fight.
Yeah.
It's setting the stage of like when you walk into a space and you like that the size and volume piece, I think is what this book makes more interesting and makes you think a bit more about.
Yeah.
Because it's especially if you are just a regular, like even if you don't have any larger sized player characters in your group, it's not that it's like you step into a room and the chair height, like the seat of the chair is at your nose level.
Yeah.
You know, it's coming into a world that is not like made for you at all.
Yeah.
And again, it's things that could just add a little bit more context and maybe make your players think differently about how to set up say combat, where you have to like jump up and do an acrobatics check just to get down the seat of the chair. And then from there you can like reach the waist of the giant.
Yeah. Now imagine you like fail your skill check to like get on top of the chair and it laughs at you, and then again have those descriptors of like the laugh rumbles through your ears and you are like deafened for 10 seconds. They pick you up by the scruff of your neck and put you on top of the chair.
Right?
Right. Like those describers without yelling at your players helps to kind of give again that visual of how large these creatures actually are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
and
even
it can be missed.
Yeah. And even like describing like the size of their forearm is how big you are. Mm-hmm. You reach their knee, right? Like that kind of stuff too. It like the sword that it carries is 4 times the size of you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This thing, and you're like, I don't even know how they would have forged something like that.
Yeah, like you could use it as like a slide.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think my biggest thing around the role-playing tips portion of this book is around how to describe size and how to describe sound and how to describe those things. Because I, as a DM, sometimes run into problems with, again, easy descriptors to give people an idea of what's going on without having to, like, break it down by, like, he's 10 feet tall. And in comparison, you are 4 feet tall, right?
Yeah.
Those are, like, again, using numbers to describe things. And sometimes I like the fact that this book will give you more verbal cues on how to do stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So, was there anything that jumps out at you as being a good plot hook that you would like to want to play in some of the ones that I did?
Well, I mean, yeah, they all sound intriguing.
Yeah.
I feel like I have seen, especially like the Hill Giant one, Adam has thrown random little things like that. He's going to be so mad because I can't remember the name of the exact giant, but we had that one that had the pumpkin heads.
Oh, yeah.
And was chucking them at us.
Yeah.
Throwing
them like rocks. Yeah.
And fucked us up before I think, finally fucked it up. But I think generally I'll kind of spin this question as, if you're struggling with plot hooks or how to bring them in, this book has so many.
Yeah.
And so you can, and more and specific based on the type of giant and scenario you want to bring, there is likely a place to find inspiration. And I think that's what is nice.
Yeah. And like just to give you an example, like this chapter itself is almost 20 pages long.
Yeah, like we could have an episode just going through and talking about all of the different scenarios that they present.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, again, like, just small ones, like, under Fire Giants, they have rust monsters, are automatically hostile towards anyone using metal objects, following the scent of iron.
Nice.
Like, it's just, like, it just gives you random stuff that you might encounter when you're within a Fire Giant's place, and so on and so forth, so...
Yeah, I like that because it's also more than just your encounter with the giant.
Yeah.
It's the scenario that you're putting yourself in.
Yeah. And, like, under the Death Giant ones, there's one where it's just, like, one Death Giant Reaper searching for a creature it killed whose soul escaped the Raven Queen's clutches. The creature is now a revenant.
Ooh, nice.
Like, so, like, you could go in here for some undead common themes, because they do include the Death Giants in here, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it about role-playing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're moving on to another very exciting topic that I'm glad is included in this book. Giant treasure.
Yeah.
So we've spoke a number of times in previous 2 seasons about giants carrying different things, whether it be their like weapons, tools, and things that they've picked up from their different battles, like the femur from the Etten that they, or probably not an Eppen, the T-Rex that they killed. Yeah. They now have like a tooth, and they like to keep mementos. And I feel also like, especially if you encounter a giant that's been wandering and is not necessarily in its home, it's going to have something from their homeland in their bag. They will also have with them like food and drink that might get more disgusting as you go lower in the ordning, but nonetheless.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, giant bags. And with that, this is why we are drinking wine out of a bag today.
Bag wine.
Yes. And so I think we need a top up for this final section.
All right.
Megan, will you do the honors?
Of course. This one is not as attractive as a regular pour, so I apologize.
Love it. All right, so kick things off. Let's build out what is in a giant's bag from a giant family, because this is what the book allows us to do. So pick one of the 6 types of families of giants, Megan.
Pick a type?
Yep.
Cloud.
All right, so in the chapter 5 under giant treasures, you can build out a cloud giant bag. And so it includes a realistic amount of silver pieces, gold pieces that it might have. The number of boulders it will have for throwing is 1d4 plus 1. You can roll for it. And then the amount of like items that would reasonably be found in a bag. So you would roll a 1d4, and then there is a d12 table to actually pick however many items from.
Okay.
So since we don't roll dice in this series, pick a number between 1 and 12.
Ooh, 9.
9. So in this cloud giant bag, we have a giant-sized silk dressing gown worth 125 gold pieces.
Oh my god.
So it's for fancy dress when they go out for dinner.
This is velvet, not velveteen, and a gentleman knows the difference.
Love it.
The best, like, I feel like the cloud giant would know, but like if you put that in a hill giant's bag, they'd be like, "Oh, look at this sneeze rag."
Yes, right? Yeah, and so there's a few pages, but each one has its own like descriptor on how to build out your giant's bag.
Fair enough.
So after that, it goes into describing giant relics that can be found in the old remnants of giant civilizations and what you might find there. Mm-hmm. So it includes coins, and think these are coins for giants. So they're not the size of humanoid and humans coins. They are like giant discs to us.
Yeah, you would get crushed by one if it fell on top of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And gemstones and art. So, like, remember, stone giants are artsy, which is why you love them. Not quite as much as frost giants.
No, I do love a stone giant, though.
But yeah, stone giants, they're artsy. And so if you're interested in pulling some, like, really great giant loot, if your adventure is going to an ancient civilization, it's all in this book, too. Mm-hmm. The inspiration is plentiful. You can even roll for what art objects you may find depending on the value that you want. So you can roll, like, if they're finding something worth, like, 250 gold pieces or more, there's a different table for that.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I love it. And not surprisingly, you could also find magic items as giant treasure. So we get a list of 27 magic items in this book, ranging from weapons to armor to rings to wondrous items. And remember, these are from giants, so they will be giant size. But it's magic items, so it's also described whether you can decide whether it's the everything fits, so you take the giant ring, and then as soon as you attune to it, it shrinks to the size that you need, you know?
Yeah.
You can do that, or you can go the route of nothing resizes. And so if you find amazing giant armor, well, your Goliath might be able to wear it, but you as regular human or elf or halfling for sure can't. Like, you know? So
or
you kind of have to make the call on how you want to play that.
Yeah, I remember when you played a Loxodon, which isn't a giant, but like
the largest sized medium creature.
And like you gifted your shield to my character when she died.
Yes.
And my character took that shield because she could use it and like broke it down and created, I think it was like 2 daggers and a buckler out of it.
Yeah.
So that she could utilize this gift. And it was, when you gave it to her, it was specifically labeled as repurpose this for something that you could use.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
So I also like the idea of having a giant's ring that you wear as a bracelet or a necklace.
Yeah.
Right?
It could be like a halfling's like choker necklace.
Right?
With, like all these like gemstones on it.
It's like, oh, what a lovely necklace you have. Yes, I took this off the ring finger of a giant. Indeed.
Yeah. And I mean, in this book, they've thought about it.
Yeah.
And if you want some direction on that, it's listed there.
Yeah.
And what is also fun about this, like, treasure around giants is, as a DM, don't miss the opportunity to describe runes and rune carvings that will go along with all these items in one way or another.
Yeah.
And what happens when the magic item is used. So you can add the flavor, like do the runes shine brightly as you're like using this, you know, dagger or whatever. Mm-hmm. Are they only visible when it's attuned and activated? So all of that kind of stuff can even add more interest to the item, because let's be real, lots of the list of magic items, like, you can't throw 5 wondrous items being available to your like party to find. Yeah. It would just break your game. So you do have to pick and choose specifically what you might want them to be able to find. Yeah. And so you can add just a bit of extra excitement to emphasize how rare and important it is that they actually found it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved this chapter. Mm-hmm. It was great. And so I could, again, spend another half hour talking about all of the items that are listed, but I digress. We'll move on. Moving on to our monster of the episode, Bag Jelly. We've come this far. So today it's on theme with bags and treasure. The Bag Jelly, an olive-colored ooze that is found in bags carried by giants, and they feed on organic matter. They are resistant to squishing and also can be used as a bludgeoning weapon.
Nice. Fuck yeah.
So whether you are a cloud giant that wants to keep bag jellies out of their precious collection in their bag, or a hill giant that welcomes them in to prevent pickpockets from taking their rotten food and like dinosaur bones, mm-hmm. A bag jelly can be a hilarious addition to your encounters. Yeah. Especially if the battle is over and it's I loot the hill giant. And it's like, okay, well, he has a giant bag. And it's like, I open the bag. And you're rolling initiative again. Because there's a bag jelly in there. There's also a clever quote from Diancastra on this page. And it says, I am not one to discount Dwarvish sagas as a rule. But everyone knows that food left in a bag too long sometimes comes alive. Eat it before it eats you. That's my motto. So, I love it.
Amazing.
So, bag jelly are only a CR of 1 and are, as you'd expect, slow-moving, very easy to hit with a low AC, and as an ooze, they will be able to fit through small places, and they attack like a pseudopod and will deal acid damage and try to grapple you. So, probably not going to devastate your party, depending on the level, I guess.
Yeah.
But will be kind of a funny surprise.
So, here's the thing. All I can think of is, like, when I was in elementary school, I don't know, but we brown bagged our lunch to, like, school when I was in elementary school and high school. And there would always be a piece of fruit or a plum that I would forget is in the bottom of that bag at the bottom of my backpack. And every once in a while, my backpack would start smelling like fermented fruit. And it is because of that fucking plum that I forgot was in the bottom of that bag.
Yep.
Yeah. Without fail. Also, like, you'd leave it in my locker or something, and there would be, like, an apple there that just ends up shriveling into nothingness. Right? Yeah. Imagining it coming to life and being the size of a giant scares the crap out of me, so...
Anyways.
So what are your thoughts about the treasures and loot in this book?
phenomenal addition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I do like the fact that they referenced it as like, it will stay giant. It is giant-sized loot.
Yeah.
Like, don't be an idiot, right? Like,
and I remember when we were doing like just the book review, rapid fire flipping through this book.
Yeah.
We said at the beginning of that episode, it was like, I really hope that they acknowledge like what giants, like the reality of a giant being like in your realm and in your situation. They'll have that bag and they'll have rocks and all of that. And here it is. You even get to roll for how many boulders they have in their bag to use as ammo in a combat. Like, it's like, thank you. You delivered on expectations.
100%. You definitely like took someone from Megan and Casey's brain and sat down and be like, okay, if there was a giant, how do we actually make this work? How many rocks do they carry? How many bags do they have? What does their loincloth look like?
Yeah.
Like, they went in for us. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and it's always fun to have even more magic items to pick from.
It's true.
Yeah, you can pick from any other book as well, but they just brought some more that are more giant based.
Yeah, because like in the like original PHB and stuff, like you do get like your classic potions of like cloud giant strength or like whatever like that you can use. So I'm happy to see that we get a couple of different options to be able to utilize.
Yeah, and I like. Again, we could go in a deep dive into the magic items, but there's things like Crown of the Wrathbringer and Armor of Safeguarding. There is Harp of Gilded Plenty, the Helm of Perfect Potential.
Yeah.
Like, it's just ripe with like, oh, so good.
And the funny thing for me is like, again, either these are objects that were created human-sized, the giants have them, or vice versa, right? I'm imagining this tiny crown on top of the head.
It's a tiara.
This is a tiara. Yeah. Oh my god. Or it is a human-sized crown, but they wear it as a ring. So when they take it off, you wear it as a crown.
It could be, yes. Yes, because it could be the other way around. Easy.
Yeah. It's so funny. All right, so that is all for this first episode of Season 3 of our Giant series. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with more updates from Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, itsamimic.com, and a Patreon. If you'd like to discuss what you've heard here today, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and at r/itsamimic, and patrons can chat us up on our patron-only Discord channel. For other episodes on other kinds of monsters, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
Bag of wine.
A bag of wine today. Which, we have had many a bag of wine. This was not in our top 10.
No, this was not our top 10 card Bordeaux. Yeah, I highly do not recommend. I'm sorry. We'll do better next time, I promise. Yep.
Whew.
Ready?
Okay. Ready.
Well, okay. God damn it. Ready.
Okay, ready.
Ready.